Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar today on Is It Time to Create Intentional Hiring? My name is Tricia Baxter, and I am the Associate Program Director for Envestnet Institute on campus. Joining me on today's call is Jim Seuffert, Managing Director at Envestnet, and he is the Program Director of Envestnet Institute on campus. And Steve Clark is the President of DAC Associates. We have some slides to present to you that should take about 30 to 40 minutes. And we will leave time for questions at the end of the call. This webinar is also being recorded so that we can share with those that were unable to attend today. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Jim Seuffert and let him get started.
Thank you, Tricia. And thanks everybody for taking the time today to be on this call. We do have quite a diverse group in attendance today, including representatives from asset management firms, wealth advisory firms, fintech providers, as well as several attendees from universities. So welcome to everybody. So over the next 30 minutes, as Tricia pointed out, we're going to be covering three topics. First, I'll give you an overview of Envestnet Institute on campus, as well as our measurements of success. From there, I'll turn it over to Steve Clark, and he will walk us through our DAC Resume Hub, as well as highlight two case studies of students who were recently hired. And then finally, Steve will turn it back to me. I want to talk about several observations of our student talent base, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So, when we first started the Envestnet Institute on campus, it was spring of 2015, and we were doing lots of webinars on the topic. And we would spend the first 6 to 8 slides just framing the issue, framing the diversity and the talent issue. I'm happy to say today that we're down to 1. And the reason is because we think we've been moving from the awareness stage into the taking action phase, which is a very good place to be. I do want to point out this something around this third bullet point, which is worth mentioning: the definition of diversity, which continues to be redefined and broadened, if you will. So we all know the definition as we see it today is minorities, more women, two very important initiatives that all of us are very concerned about in the industry and needs to be addressed. But what we're also hearing, and we just want to share this, we've had a couple of firms request the following. I'll just give you 2 examples of how they're thinking about intentional hiring. So one example is we've actually had a firm request diverse talent from liberal arts colleges and universities, which we think is interesting. A second example, and a live one, which is fascinating, is we've had requests from firms on the West Coast, on the East Coast, the Northeast, for students who actually reside in the Midwest and may want to relocate to the East Coast. So the point of what I'm saying is that we are listening. This is a very interesting topic in and as of itself. And as we expand Envestnet Institute on campus, we may in fact be broadening it to explore, for instance, women re-entering the workforce, as well as our military who want to get into wealth and asset management or fintech. So we keep listening, we keep evolving the program. So in a nutshell, here's the mission. I'll say this a little bit differently. The mission is to provide a steady stream of diverse talent who are workforce ready on day 1. That's our mission. I do want to talk about the program for a couple of minutes. It's important to give you an overview of how it works, what it means to you as an employer, on the line today, looking for talent within your firm. So here's the couple of minutes of the overview of how it works. First and foremost, we are industry sponsored. So there is no cost to the student and there is no cost to the university. One example of one of our major sponsors from day one is Fiserv. Fiserv is a sponsor, Fiserv is a partner, Fiserv is a board member, and Cheryl Nash, who's the president of Fiserv Investment Services, runs the Women in Wealth initiative underneath Envestnet Institute on campus, which is critically important, as you all know, to the future of our business. We're not going to get into it today. You can actually go to our website, InvestNetInstituteOnCampus.com, and look through the Women in Wealth program, what it does. But once again, we are an industry-sponsored initiative, and in fact, we do have another participant joining us as sponsor very shortly, and we'll be announcing that in the next couple of weeks. So, right now there are 7 required classes, and how it works is that each university gets 25, call it slots, per semester. So we run a fall session and we run a spring session. So right now we're like right in the middle of our fall session. So that's 50 slots per university per school year, if you will. So this is meaningful to everybody on the phone. There are 7 classes, 7 tests, 7 hours roughly of mandatory training with an additional 4 to 6 hours of optional training. The students and the professors say that this is practical training, and it fits in nicely with what they're being taught in the classroom. So what we teach the student is the language of our business, inclusive of our product solutions. So for example, SMA, UMA, mutual fund wrap, ETF wrap. What is overlay management? What is model management? How does it work? How do these products evolve? How are they sold? How are they priced? So what's great for you on the phone here, if you have a workforce-ready student who knows the lingo, knows the acronyms, knows what a fiduciary is, a broker-dealer, they can step into the conversation day one. And we even have an entire class dedicated to what an advisor does, as well as a class on wealth management technologies. So we will cover, final point in the series, the resume hub. We'll cover that, in a few minutes. Steve will cover that. But we do have a resume hub, which is an important ingredient to the program. So here's the participating university map. As you can see here, but just looking at the names, we have a very diverse list of universities, which we think is a very, 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 very much a positive. We have 30 in total, and we're growing between 7 and 10 schools per calendar year. What's been great about this is we continue to move south, continue to move to the Midwest, and we are making great progress moving out to the West Coast. And as you can see, there's a little dot there. University of San Diego is one of our current participants out on the West Coast, and we actually have 2 prospects in addition to University of San Diego in the pipeline as well. Now the next few slides, what I'd like to cover here is what our progress is and our measurements of success. So this slide here, the program progress, this illustrates the total number of students who have completed Envestnet Institute on campus, broken out by semester. And as you can see here, the growth has been impressive. And with any luck, with the semester that we're in the middle of now, the fall semester, we may hit over 2,000 students come Christmas time. So what that simply means to each of you on the phone here is that if you're looking to hire right now, whether it be an intern or an entry-level hire, we're going to have a larger pool to choose from, which is great news. We do measure and track our women and minorities in the program. This continues to grow, which we're very happy about. It's going to be very important that we seek out 100% women students, women universities over time. And from a minority standpoint, we're doing quite well here, in our opinion. It's growing well. We're actively seeking universities with diverse populations of students. So, for example, Rutgers and St. Peter's, who are in the program, are both ranked in the top 50 of most ethnically diverse universities in America. So quite proud of that as well. So measurements of success here. Let me just cover a few of these, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve. First of all, we're very proud of this. It appears that the industry is proud of us as well. So last week, we won the MMI Barron's Industry Award for the second year in a row for our work in giving back to the industry. And we do think that one of the reasons we were fortunate enough to win this award is, once again, the measurements of our success. One sample of that is another stat that we're very proud of, in that we have a 79% completion rate. So what that means is that when a student starts the program, 79% of them finish it. And that's rather unheard of in an e-learning environment where the student is taking the classes at their own pace. So it's totally through the internet, the 7 classes, the 7 hours, the 7 tests, and then we're in contact with the universities, making sure everybody's aware of where each student is within the semester itself. Another great stat is 74% of our graduates have obtained jobs within the financial services industry. So we have a database of where everybody is. We have a midterm report, and we produce an annual report. And we locate the students. Not hard to do. Using LinkedIn and other methods, we figure out who's hiring, what the positions are, how the students are doing, and then over time, we're going to figure out where they go next in their lives, which is great data to have for everybody. And then finally, we are keeping track of the participation, as I mentioned, of women and minorities, and that's increasing nicely as well as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. We'll cover the Resume Hub, and then he will flip it back to me for some final comments.
Great, thanks, Jim. Steve, you want to take the go?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Jim, and hello to everyone on the call today. My name is Steve Clark. I'm the president of DAC Associates. And just to give you a little bit of color, DAC is a national executive search and consulting firm. We're based in Philadelphia, and we're now in our 39th year in business. We work exclusively within financial services, and we work across several key segments, namely asset management, insurance and retirement, wealth, as well as the back office and financial technology side of the business. And our searches are fairly broad and range from sales and distribution to C-suite to investment management, and again, to the back office side of these businesses. And by virtue of being a search firm, over the years, we have amassed a significant database, and we have built very specific and detailed coding specific for the financial services business. So, you know, as we're coding candidates into our database, we can code them by function, by the distribution exposure that they've had or been selling into, product exposure that they've had, their securities licensing, professional designations and credentials, most importantly, the geography, where they live or where they're willing to, carry out their career, language proficiency, and numerous other inputs. And just to tie it together, with respect to our partnership to the Envestnet Institute on campus, when the program took off, it became very clear early on to Jim and Tricia and the folks at Envestnet that they needed a database to house and track the students who were going through the Envestnet Institute on-campus program. And moreover, they needed a service center, if you will, to service and support the corporate users of this program who may be bringing in students into internship programs, or we're looking to hire newly minted graduates of the program into an entry-level role. And through our long-standing relationship with Jim and Tricia and the folks at Envestnet, we were honored that they asked us to partner, and we've been involved with the program for the past 3 years. And as part of this partnership and speaking to the coding capabilities of our database, DAC created coding specific to the Envestnet program, and we can easily identify internship students or entry-level hire students anywhere around the country in terms of where they live now, where they're going to school, where they're willing to carry out a summer internship or perhaps that entry-level hire. And as Jim mentioned, as they continue to track through their career and have real business experience, we're going to be able to code them and update them to make sure that we're staying in lockstep with where they are from a professional standpoint. As you can imagine, one of the first questions that I get, that we get as a program is, how does this all work, right? How do we use DAKdirect, and what's it cost, and how does it work? So once your organization has identified a need, be it a summer intern or entry-level hire, you simply reach out to DAC directly to discuss your need. There's an individual by the name of Ashley Bang, who was our program administrator on the DAC side, who's takes these calls on a daily basis, and I'm always happy to take your calls in her absence. But we really want to understand your firm, your need, the profile and skill sets that you're seeking. So it really starts with a phone call from the corporate user. The cost, in my mind, is minimal. It's $500 to use the service, and there is no additional cost beyond that if it's for a summer internship. So it's a $500 administrative fee, and if it's for a summer internship, there's no additional cost beyond that. If your need is more as an entry-level hire or permanent hire, there's an additional $500 success fee that's paid upon the individual start date. So in total, it's $500 to use the service for a summer intern. It's $1,000 to use the service for a permanent hire, and that's split into two payments: a $500 administrative fee up front, and then a $500 success fee once the student starts at your organization. The account setup is fairly easy. You can actually set up an account on the DAKdirect site. Payments can be made through the site with a corporate credit card, or if it's easier, we can also bill you directly in a more conventional fashion. And as students successfully complete the Envestnet Institute on Campus program, their resumes are sent to DAC and the DAKdirect hub. And these students also fill out a profile so that we can start to gauge their interest as well as their geographical requirements. As you can imagine, some students may want to be more sales or client-facing. Some students may be more analytical and want to go down a completely different path, whether it's research or investment management. Others may be thinking about technology or corporate roles, whether it's marketing or compliance or corporate development or investor relations. So we really try to profile the students and get a sense of where their leanings or predispositions are, so that we can be, thoughtful when we reach out to them. And then as opportunities arise on the internship or the entry, level hire front, DAC contacts the student population to let them know about the opportunities. And once those students come forward, we begin the process of qualifying them around the opportunity. So on that note, I'd like to briefly take everyone through 2 case studies, which I think are real world examples and also can touch on, the process and how we go about qualifying the students. So Tricia, if we could go to that funnel number 1. So this first case study is a Washington, D.C. area wealth RIA. So the firm has several $100 million in assets under management, very successful, very well run, but a very small organization. I believe they had maybe 5 total employees. And they were looking to bring in a summer intern who would get involved with back office duties and some research, and they might get involved with Seuffert reports and Seuffert analysis and things of that nature. So right off the bat, because we're dealing with a summer intern, and most firms are not going to put a student up for temporary housing, we needed to identify students who were either from the DC Beltway area or perhaps had extended family that they could live with in the area during the duration of the summer internship. So our first approach was to reach out directly to students that we could identify in our database who lived in that Northern Virginia, DC area. But then on a much broader level, we reached out to the total population to identify students who had extended family and could stay with them. And so, as you can see here, we reached out to several hundred students. 83 students originally, showed some surface level interest. Once we sort of filtered through that, 20 students became or showed serious interest in the opportunity. We whittled that down to 10. And then from 10, we ultimately got that down to 4 students. So some of the qualifiers here were really key. So of course I touched on the geographical qualifier, right? It starts with that. But secondly, we needed a student who would come into this internship eyes wide open. They needed to know, number one, that this was a wealth organization. So it had to be a student that either had designs on a career in wealth or at least enough interest and intrigue in wealth to where that would be appealing. It needed to be a student who came in eyes wide open, that this was a small organization. I mean, really small, right? 5 employees, completely different, dynamic, especially for, a young individual to come into. Even though it's an internship, there was a high degree of accountability. And that was really communicated to us by this particular employer and user. So, a lot went into our qualifying beyond geography to really around the realities of the internship and the realities of the firm and the size and the number of people and accountability and all that went with it. And when we whittled it to 4, the process really takes over, right? Now these students are talking to our client. There was a series of calls that culminated into 2 finalists who then went to a next stage, which was video conferencing. And then we ultimately made an offer that was accepted. I'm pleased to report that this was a successful match, not only for the client firm, the wealth RIA, but also the student. And it was such a good experience for that particular wealth RIA, that earlier this year they contacted us to bring aboard yet another intern this past summer. So I just want to point out that there's a lot that goes into the process. This is not a data dump, and we're not, you're not getting 50 student resumes, thrown in your lap. It's very thoughtful and it's very customized. The second example that I want to share with you is an asset manager. Now, a much larger firm, Philadelphia-based organization, multi-billion-dollar alternative investment firm. They manufacture and distribute very complex, very sophisticated alternative investment solutions, private equity, BDCs, et cetera. And they have a wholesale distribution model where they have external salespeople in the field. They have internal sales folks who support that external sales professional. And then they have another layer, if you will, called an advisory associate who's part of that triumvirate. And the advisory associate, even though they're in that third tier of that team model, they are responsible for selling, and they are responsible for client outreach and marketing campaigns and call campaigns and all that goes with it. And so this particular client they have a very strong investment culture. They also are very big in the behavioral profiling. This was a permanent hire. And, even though it was an entry-level hire, this client had very high standards around prospective student candidates. So students needed to have a particular GPA and higher. Even though we're talking about college students here, they needed to demonstrate either in their college career or in their high school years leading up to college that they've been in some kind of client-facing or sales role, and they could demonstrate some level of sales aptitude. These students also had to demonstrate that they did their homework around this firm, around their products, and they had to demonstrate that they, understood wholesale distribution and what that means, how you're distributing asset management solutions to financial advisors, working through broker-dealers and wealth firms and wealth platforms. And so again, another case where numerous coding and metrics came into place. Obviously, it's a permanent hire. The firm's in Philadelphia. These needed to be students who either were from or lived in the Philadelphia area or were career-minded enough to move to the Philadelphia area. So that was part of the profiling. You had the GPA component. We had to delve into where they had sales experience and could demonstrate sales aptitude. And then the students had to be serious enough to do their homework around this firm and the culture and the products and their sales model. So here we reached out to 61 students. We got that down to 18. Ultimately, 5 were presented to the client. And I'm again pleased to report that this had a successful outcome. And this was only several months ago. And that client has come back to us because they're interested in hiring, yet, another graduate from the Envestnet Institute on campus program. So again, I just want to reiterate that there's a lot that goes into the qualifying. There's a lot that goes into the process. And every client's different, and many of them have different qualifiers. Some that we speak with are looking for an academic course of study. They're looking for certain GPA, geographical requirements, including relocation. We have some firms that come to us looking for students who have the ability to code, students who are experienced in research and statistical analysis. Diversity's very big. Some users will come to us looking for particular diversity, whether it's gender or persons of color, the ability to work and fit in a small company, and the list goes on and on. And so before, I flip it back to Jim here, because, when I think of DAKdirect, I think of it as the rubber really hitting the road, right? The marriage between the corporate user and the Envestnet Institute on-campus program. And there's a couple things that have jumped out to me in our dealings with the students that I just wanted to impart to everyone on the call today. Number one is we found that the students that we've dealt with are very serious about their professional development. Clearly, that's evidenced by the fact that they've taken it upon themselves to go through this course to begin with. And they're very serious about careers in financial services, whether that's going down the wealth avenue or the asset management avenue or the technology avenue. They're serious about financial services as a career launching pad. So I think that's important to point out. Secondly, when they come to you, they not only have an understanding of the financial services landscape and the ecosystem, if you will, but they have a foundational understanding of products and trends and issues. And when they get to you, you're not starting with a complete neophyte, right? They still have to learn and grow and be indoctrinated into your organization, and you still have to coach them and train them up. But you're getting them at a farther point in the evolutionary cycle, which I think eases the burden on your internal training, structures and things of that nature. So you're really getting them ready to dive into your organization. And the last thing I would share with you, and I was a little surprised, but many of them, almost surprisingly, are willing to go anywhere for an opportunity. I mean, we've had, other case studies where students who lived in New England have moved to Florida, or, they're from New York and they've gone to Tampa. So sometimes I think of these students as maybe wanting to stay a little bit more in their home range. And surprisingly, at this point in their life, they're willing to take a chance and relocate for the right role. They don't know enough to know the big company, small company differential. So they're coming in, with no predisposition or anything around working for a big company over a small company, working for an asset manager or a wealth manager. I think the bottom line is they're open-minded and they want to learn. So I just wanted to share our sort of direct experience with some of these students. And with that, Jim, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Let me wrap this up, and I want to sort of follow through with a few observations that Steve brought up. On the screen here, these are actual students that have been through the program. It's a very, very small sampling. We could spend an hour talking about the students that we know that have been through the program. But to Steve's point, just a couple of points to highlight a little bit further. First and foremost, the majority of these students, as Steve has pointed out, they do this course on their own time. And when you look at their resumes, the talent within the hub, if you will, you'll be impressed with what they do inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom. Another point to bring out is that many of the students who are graduating, and I can point out a few of them here. So for instance, this gentleman in the middle, Fiorde Mula, he's actually from Albania. He's actually a student, a senior at Colgate University. We secured him 2 internships over the last couple of years, one with an asset management firm in New York City, the second one with BlackRock in New York City. He studied in Geneva. He was president of the Colgate Investment Club. And here's an individual who is, workforce ready and someone who's now entertaining possibilities in the workforce. As Steve pointed out, relocation hasn't been an issue here for many of these students. In the lower left, that's Hezekiah Ross. DAC Associates did a search for a very well-known high net worth advisory shop down in Miami. Hezekiah lives in Providence, Rhode Island. The high net worth shop wanted to start really focusing in on their succession planning and hire somebody to run their software. So for those of you who are wealth advisors on the phone, many of these students are very, very adept, as you know, with running software, running proposal systems, running financial planning tools. That's what Hezekiah is doing, as well as preparing the advisors for client visits. And then eventually Hezekiah will be meeting with the children of the clients of the firm. So I could go on and talk through these examples. I guess my point is that we do a lot more than this, as Steve mentioned, than just doing the data dumps. We're on campuses quite a bit, weekly to be exact. So we meet with the professors, we meet with the students, we do a lot of mentoring. The Women in Wealth program, for instance, has its own mentoring program for young women wishing to enter the business. So in closing, you can see here we left up our email addresses. There you go. There's our address for the website. And all we're asking to do here, if you have questions, further questions about the Institute, even questions about how to maybe put together an internship, what can an intern do for me, at my shop, feel free to call me on those types of questions. And then obviously what we're trying to say is try a search, whether it be an intern or an entry-level position, and do it through DAC Associates. So at this point in time, Trish, we can open it up for some questions.
Yes, so if you'd like to ask a question on the GoToWebinar toolbar, you have the ability to type in a question. So if you'd like to submit some questions, in the meantime, I have some questions that we have gotten on previous calls and just in general about our program and the Resume Hub. And one of the questions came from a hiring firm, and Steve, I'll turn this one over to you. What's the time frame start to finish from a firm reaching out, looking to fill a position, to when they might start getting resumes to interview? What's that turnaround time?
Sure. So generally speaking, it takes about, naturally we have to reach out to the students, and it may, they have classes, and it may take some time for them to get back to us. But generally within a week to 2 week period, we have reached out to the students. The students start coming back to us. We're engaging them in phone conversations. As we qualify them and we think they're a fit for the opportunity, we immediately present their resume and profile, to that corporate user. And we've had, internships affected as soon as 3 weeks. We've had internships and entry-level hires affected within a month to a month and a half. So a lot really depends on the corporate user, their internal process, how involved or not involved it is. In the case, that first case study that I shared, the Wealth RIA down in the DC area, I think within a month, we had literally gone from initial DAC outreach, multiple phone conversations that the client had with candidates and videos, and then I think the student that they hired, they had coffee with that student. That all happened within a month. So it's pretty accelerated.
Great, thank you. Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question that constantly comes up when we're speaking to employers. One of the main ones is, give me some examples of the positions that you've placed students into, and I'll start, Steve, and see if I miss any. That faces in the crowd slide before. We've placed quite a few individuals into internal sales support roles, Analytical roles is another example. So those of you who have, analytical needs, analytical positions, whether they be actually interpreting analytics, actually creating analytics. We here at Yodlee, we've hired a few of these students to actually go out and sell analytics. So that's another example. Marketing roles, digital marketing roles. For those of you who are advisors on the phone thinking about hiring an intern, we had an intern here over the summer who's located in the upper left-hand corner here. She's a senior at Penn State, and we gave her the opportunity to redesign the Envestnet Institute on campus website. And without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of meetings, and sitting alongside her every step of the way, she pretty much led this from start to finish on her own. And we'll be rolling out our new website here in a few weeks, and it's mainly because of the efforts that she put forth doing it over the summer. So they can, in fact, step in a summer internship role and look at your marketing materials, do projects, do research on robo-investing and millennial investing as well. So they're quite accomplished and self-starters, if you will. Other roles, research analysts, junior portfolio managers, and obviously operations at all levels. Steve, did I miss any?
We've had some specialty ones like quality assurance and inquiries around stat and coding and things of that nature. But no, I think you've pretty much hit on all of them.
Yeah.
Great. Steve, we got another question about the searches and the cost of the search. So the question is, if you're hiring for more than one of the same role, is it $500 for each role or $500 per search?
Yeah. So if it's an internship, it would be $500 per search, right? And if it's entry-level hires, it would be $500 again to use the service for that hire. And then if you actually were to hire a student into a permanent role, it would be a $500 success fee per student hired into a permanent role.
So I think the question was around, say you presented 4 students and they ended up hiring 2 for the role in a full-time role. So in that example, it'd be $500 for the search and then $500 for each of the permanent hires for a total of $1,500. Am I getting that correct?
Exactly.
Perfect.
One more question.
Just to come back to that, Tricia. So, right, if it was a situation, let's say they thought they wanted to hire an entry-level hire, and they pay the $500 administrative fee, and instead of hiring one, they hired 2. Right, there would be a $500 success fee for the one and a $500 success fee for the second. But if they came back a month later and decided to use the program all over again, then they would pay the administrative fee up front again.
Right, because you would technically do another search at a later date. Exactly.
So let me just close out with one other question that I get, and we'll wrap this up. So on occasion, I'll get the question, well, why don't you just create a job board and let the students match up with whatever the need is? Right now, our strong feeling, and I'll use the I word, my strong feeling is that it's suboptimal. And the reason why it is the examples that Steve went over today. First of all, the price point, and I've been told over the phone, I've been asked why it's so cheap, which we're not going to get into, but I've been asked that question. But as far as the recipe that goes into all of this, I can assure you that from the time we spend on the campuses with the professors, with the students, and then we sort of do the inverse funnel, if you will, we get to know a lot about these students just simply by showing up and actually making those referral calls, checking out their social media, all the qualifiers and all the profiling that goes into this. It goes far beyond a job board. So for now, until something changes, this is the way we're approaching it, and we think it's the best thing for you, the employer, on the line today.
And Jim, if I could, please, Tricia.
I was just going to say, just as a follow-up, I said I think it's best for the employee, and I think in the long run it's best for the employee, because the employee is going into a situation where they have a lot more background. So in the example of the small wealth RIA, Steve and his team were very upfront about the needs of that RIA and about how it's a small office and, how you need to work in that kind of environment. So I think that it also adds a lot of value to these students about the position they're actually interviewing for.
Very good point.
Exactly, Tricia, and you're right in line with my thinking. I was just going to share with everyone that a lot of times we'll have students who respond favorably to an opportunity, and once we start talking to them and qualifying them, they realize real quick. An example would be on the sales front. Oh, I didn't know it was sales. Proactive phone calls, or right. So if you left them to their own devices to match themselves up, you might get a lot of mismatches that you'd have to work through and vet through.
Okay.
Well, thank everyone for your time today. As I mentioned, we did record this video. We will have it posted up on our website, and we'll share with you via email in case you'd like to share with any of your colleagues internally, or if you have friends within the industry. We would love to help extend our message and get it out in the industry. So look for that email in the next day or so. We'll post it on our website, and the Envestnet Institute will also post it on their website. So we will have it everywhere and make it available to you. So appreciate your time today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.